Welcome back to the show. Traditionally, home ownership has been one of the main vehicles for accumulating wealth and financial equity. While the Fair Housing Act put an end to several racist policies in our country, economic inequities still exist with a direct effect on home mortgages. Nina Johnson of U.S. Bank rejoins me along with Chester Bell to discuss the ways in which U.S. Bank is addressing those inequities. We're now being rejoined by Nina Johnson, the Senior Vice President, Consumer and Business Banking Leader with U.S. Bank, and I'm happy to have Chester Bell, the Wisconsin Home Mortgage Leader managing affordable housing programs with U.S. Bank's Mortgage Department, join us as well. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
It is my pleasure to have you here to really help pinpoint some of the things that are so important when we talk about systemic racism, specifically dealing with economics and finances. A lot of people will feel that if they go to a bank, then they may not qualify for a loan in order to gain a mortgage. And so U.S. Bank has obviously been working very hard in creating programs and services and initiatives to combat that notion that has many people may be afraid to even try to get a mortgage. Right, Mr. Bell?
Yeah, I agree. And, I can tell you this, Andrea, that, our CRA team of lenders in Milwaukee and in the Wisconsin area do a wonderful job, and the manager do a wonderful job of partnering with several of our housing agencies throughout the Milwaukee, Waukesha, and the Wisconsin area. And so I agree there is a bit of a misnomer that if they come to a bank, it's going to be more difficult. We're going to ask for a lot more documents. It's going to be a little bit more of a stringent process. That's not the truth. Actually, our programs have been geared and tailor-made towards LMI communities because we understand the commitment to home ownership and we understand the barriers of access to home ownership, and we want to provide whatever products and services that we can that's going to make the process a little bit more simple because, as I mentioned, we certainly understand the importance of home ownership and how just the root word of home ownership and having ownership in a home makes a difference for our customers and in their communities. And it also helps in terms of stemming the tide of some of that disparaging racial issues that are going on there in Milwaukee as it relates to redlining and some of those other issues in the past. We want to do our part to make sure that we are helping be part of the solution, not be part of the problem.
Yes, thank you for giving us that insight, and I'd like for Nina to come in on that. Let's talk about the redlining of the past because that really is the barrier that you're trying to break, the mental barrier that people remember when redlining was that barrier that affected so many people in our communities. So talk a little bit about where we were and where we are and where you really are trying to take all of your customers.
Sure. So thank you for just giving us the opportunity to walk through this. And I would imagine that most financial institutions are in concert to what Chester just described. He threw out a couple of acronyms that in the business banking or in the banking industry overall, we're familiar with. But when we talk about CRA, that's a Community Reinvestment Act. It was established in 1977 in the basement of a church in Chicago. And the founder came together with community leaders as well as financial institutions who were socially conscious just to make impact on communities that were supposedly redlined or disenfranchised for some reason. And so when Chester talks about CRA being the focus, and that's his title, and that's what his team does, that means that U.S. Bank set aside not only dollars, but also identified appropriate staff to make sure that the community that we're serving looks exactly like the people that are serving them.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the programs and services that you do have in place. So if someone's watching and they're interested in taking advantage of anything that has to do with a home mortgage, please fill us in on what exists.
Yeah, so firstly, I want to say that part of our job is to really educate, the community about home ownership. And that includes kind of a several part series. We work in concert with a lot of our housing agencies there in the Milwaukee and the abroad areas to make sure that folks have the basic understanding of home ownership, right? Whether it comes to credit, budgeting, understanding what it takes to buy a home, saving, and the programs that are involved. So one of our signature products that we're very proud of is our American Dream program. And our American Dream program is exactly just that. It provides the dream of home ownership. It's a program that requires very little down payment. We're talking 3%. And by the way, that can come from a gift, grant, subsidy, and all these different entities that are involved that can provide down payment assistance. It also has a rehab component to it as well. So if you have some folks out there with properties that are maybe need a little TLC and they're a little bit of an eyesore in some of the blocks, we have a rehab component to that program that allows you to actually go in, rehab the program to how you want it, not how some, maybe out-of-state developer wants to try to market the property, but to what you want and what you plan to do with that particular property. So our American Dream program is one that we're very proud of. We've helped a lot of homeowners, especially in that Milwaukee, Wisconsin area, achieve the home ownership dream.
Yeah, so very important. And Nina, when we talk about specifically the programs and services really serving those who live in Milwaukee, what would you say is most important for those who are watching to know who really do have that dream of owning their own home?
Well, the first thing I would say is that no one is off limits to owning a home. It just may take you a little extra time to get there. And so when we talk about economic sustainability, I believe that the people of Milwaukee, as well as abroad, should be aware that there are places that will help you walk through the process. And many times US Bank is either walking alongside those nonprofit entities, or we're actually helping to do the work ourselves. And so that's the thing that I really want to make sure that Milwaukee understands, is that, no one should be without the opportunity to own a home. And I've heard people say in the past, you know what, not everybody is meant to own a home. That's that person's perspective. If you have a heart to own a home and you really aspire to do that, just know that there's people on the other side of that conversation who are willing to help you get there. And like I said, if it's not US Bank, if it's not a bank employee that's helping you get there, we do fund nonprofits do the work that we may not have the time to do, but we do have the willingness to invest in making it happen.
So people can actually get resources that they need in order to put themselves in a position to own a home. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us during this segment dealing with home ownership and actually just changing the narrative when it comes to minorities owning their own home?
I know Chester has something, but I just have to share this. When you go to a coffee purveyor, I will not say a name, but if you buy a cup of coffee and it costs you $5 to purchase a cup of coffee, think about putting that money aside and start saving money to build up your nest egg for your home, and just start pouring into that kind of methodology, and watch how quickly your savings will build up. And so at a basic level, just 101, start looking at what you're spending and determine whether or not it's a want or a need. And that's the beginning to your progress to your future. Chester, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we like to say in the mortgage industry is, getting a mortgage and owning a home, it's a bit of a marathon. It's not a sprint. So even though, let's say you attempt to buy a house and let's say for whatever reason it didn't go the way that you expected it to, don't give up, because home ownership is exactly that. It's ownership. It is the first piece in building that one building block in sustainable wealth. I mean, you could pass down these properties to so many different families and create generational wealth for yourself. And that's really what this is all about. And how that ownership piece in buying a home, and you could leverage that home, by the way, to buy another home, and then encourage your neighbors to buy a home. And then before you know it, you can buy the entire block. And so there's nothing wrong with renting, nothing wrong with it at all. But at some point, if you want to become a homeowner, we provide the steps that are necessary to help you with that. And quite frankly, it's not just US Bank. There are other institutions and other organizations in Milwaukee that can certainly help you as well. But for me, I just make it a personal mission of mine to try to help as many people as we possibly can about home ownership. I own a home. I know several people that do as well. And I've helped several people who will buy homes. And to see that joy that person gets at the closing table when those keys are slid over to them and now they own that home. I mean, there's no greater feeling in the world than to see that, especially with first-time home buyers. Those are the ones that that's where our sweet spot is for first-time home buyers. So we take pride in making homeowners, especially first-time home buyers, homeowners, and then encouraging them to their family members, their coworkers, their friends, whoever, to be homeowners. Again, that first step in building wealth is ownership, and that's what we want to try to help you do at US Bank.
Yes, and I think it's a great way to sum it up to say knowledge is power, and we thank you all for giving us the information today to just really help those people who have a dream of owning their own home feel like they're one step closer to making that happen. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up next, journalist Dan Schaefer sits down with me to discuss the I-94 Stadium Freeway expansion and its potential effect on an already segregated Milwaukee community. Stay tuned.